Hello, and welcome to another video from the YouTube channel, From Religion to Agnostic. According to Encyclopedia Britannica, Japheth, one of the three sons of Noah in the Bible. According to the tradition of the priestly source of the Pentateuch, Japheth is Noah's third son, but the older Yahwist tradition, which we showed in the last video pertaining to the documentary hypothesis, Genesis 9:20 through 27, represents him as the second son. The oracle of blessing, Genesis 9:27, God enlarge Japheth, and let him dwell in the tents of Shem, and let Canaan be his slave, displays hostility against Canaan and looks favorably upon Japheth but is not easy to interpret clearly. Dwell in the tents of, is usually understood to mean, have friendly intercourse with, the passage thus indicating friendly relations between the descendants of Japheth and the Semites. According to Wikipedia, Japheth is one of the three sons of Noah in the book of Genesis, in which he plays a role in the story of Noah's drunkenness and the curse of Ham, and subsequently in the Table of Nations as the ancestor of the peoples of the Aegean Sea, Anatolia, and elsewhere. In medieval and early modern European tradition he was considered to be the progenitor of the European peoples. Okay, so let's take a minute here and before we go any further get a better understanding of what this Table of Nations is. The Table of Nations or Generations of Noah. The Generations of Noah or Table of Nations, broadly referred to as Origins Gentium, is a genealogy of the sons of Noah, according to the Hebrew Bible, Genesis 10:9, and their dispersion into many lands after the flood, focusing on the major known societies. The term nations to describe the descendants is a standard English translation of the Hebrew word, goyim, following the c. 400 CE Latin Vulgates, nations, and does not have the same political connotations that the word entails today. The list of 70 names introduces for the first time several well-known ethnonyms and toponyms important to biblical geography, such as Noah's three sons Shem, Ham, and Japheth, from which 18th-century German scholars at the Göttingen School of History derived the race terminology Semites, Hamites, and Japhetites. Certain of Noah's grandsons were also used for names of peoples. From Elam, Ashur, Aram, Cush, and Canaan were derived respectively the Elamites, Assyrians, Arameans, Cushites, and Canaanites. Likewise, from the sons of Canaan, Het, Jebus, and Amorus were derived Hittites, Jebusites, and Amorites. Further descendants of Noah include Eber from Shem, from whom come the Hebrews, the hunter king Nimrod from Cush, and the Philistines from Misraim. As Christianity spread across the Roman Empire, it carried the idea that all people were descended from Noah. But the tradition of Hellenistic Jewish identifications of the ancestry of various peoples, which concentrates very much on the Eastern Mediterranean and the ancient Near East, became stretched and its historicity questioned. Not all Near Eastern people were covered, and Northern European peoples important to the late Roman and medieval world, such as the Celtic, Slavic, Germanic, and Nordic peoples were not covered, nor were others of the world's peoples, such as Sub-Saharan Africans, Native Americans, and peoples of Central Asia, the Indian subcontinent, the Far East, and Australasia. Scholars derived a variety of arrangements to make the table fit, with for example the Scythians, which do feature in the tradition, being claimed as the ancestors of much of Northern Europe. According to Joseph Blenkinsop, the 70 names in the list express symbolically the unity of humanity, corresponding to the 70 descendants of Israel who go down into Egypt with Jacob at Genesis 46:27 and the 70 elders of Israel who visit God with Moses at the covenant ceremony in Exodus 24:1-9. Okay, and so I want to take a minute to point out, first, the very first thing we should have picked up on, any good researcher that is where it says, and I quote, scholars derived a variety of arrangements to make the table fit. Second, that I find it coincidental that this Roman text called the Septuagint was formed by what? 70 rabbis or scribes as they mention, and I quote, the 70 names in the list express symbolically the unity of humanity, corresponding to the 70 descendants of Israel who go down into Egypt with Jacob at Genesis. This goes a lot further, but I don't want to get sidetracked, so for the sake of time we will revisit this at a later date. Yes, links will be in the description box for these sources, for those researchers and truthers that want to research further. Let's move on, back to Japheth, still on Wikipedia. Origin of Japheth. The book of Genesis is the first of the 5 books of the Torah, that contains the account of Israel's origins as a people. Some scholars see this as a product of the Achaemenid Empire, probably 450 BCE to 350 BCE, although some would place its production in the Hellenistic period, 333 BCE to 164 BCE, or even the Hasmonean dynasty, 140 BCE to 37 BCE. As almost none of the persons, places, and stories in the first 11 chapters of Genesis, called the primeval history, are ever mentioned anywhere else in the Bible, some scholars surmise that the story of Japheth and his brothers is a late composition, attached to Genesis to serve as an introduction to that book and to the Torah. Japheth may be a transliteration of the Greek Iapetos, the ancestor of the Hellenic peoples. His sons and grandsons associate him with the geographic area of the eastern Mediterranean and Asia Minor, Ionia/Javan, Rhodes/Rhodanum, Cyprus/Kittim, and other points in the region of Greece and Asia Minor. The point of the blessing of Japheth seems to be that Japheth, a Greek-descended people, and Shem, the Israelites, would rule jointly over Canaan, Palestine. From the 19th century until the late 20th century, it was usual to see Japheth as a reference to the Philistines, who shared dominion over Canaan during the pre-monarchic and early monarchic period of Israel's history. This view accorded with the understanding of the origin of the book of Genesis, which was seen as having been composed in stages beginning with the time of King Solomon, when the Philistines still existed. They vanished from history after the Assyrian conquest of Canaan. However, Genesis 10:14 identifies their ancestor as Ham rather than Japheth. And again, I want to take a minute and point out here, this should be making many people ponder the text. It says, and I quote, "Some scholars surmise that the story of Japheth and his brothers is a late composition, attached to Genesis to serve as an introduction to that book and to the Torah." Things that make you go, Next, let's look at what the Jewish sources say. According to the Jewish Encyclopedia, in rabbinical literature, Japheth is considered by the Talmudists to have been the eldest son of Noah, Sanhedrin 69b, Genesis R26. The reason why Shem's name always appears first is that the sons of Noah are named in the order of their ability, i.e., as wise men, among whom Shem excelled, Sanhedrin 1.c. According to the Midrash, the prosperity of Japheth is alluded to in Psalms 1:3, and whatsoever he doth shall prosper, Genesis R1.c. In the act of covering Noah's nakedness, it was Shem who first took the cover, but Japheth came afterward to help him and was repaid therefore in that his descendants Gog and Magog were granted burial, Ezekiel 36:11 Yitzhak, Genesis R36. The words, Yaft Elohim Eli Yefet, Genesis 6:27, are interpreted as alluding to the construction of the second temple by Cyrus, who was descended from Japheth, Yumatene. Bar Kappara interpreted the passage as meaning that the law will be explained in the language of Japheth, Genesis R36, Deuteronomy R1, R B. Abba, interpreting Yaft, as derived from the root, meaning beauty, see Japheth, biblical data, explains it more clearly thus, the law will be explained in the beautiful language of the Greeks, descendants of Japheth, Meg 9b. According to the Targum Pseudo-Jonathan, ad Loc, the passage means that the descendants of Japheth will become proselytes and will study the law in the schools of Shem. When God blessed Noah and his sons, Genesis 11:1, he in blessing Japheth promised that all of his sons should be white, and he gave them as their portion deserts and fields, Perk Rel 26. And lastly, from other sources. In Josephus' Antiquities of the Jews, I.6.122, Wiston. Josephus wrote, Japheth, the son of Noah, had 7 sons. They inhabited so, that, beginning at the mountains Taurus and Amanus, they proceeded along Asia, as far as the river Tanis, Don, and along Europe to Cadiz, and settling themselves on the lands which they light upon, which none had inhabited before, they called the nations by their own names. Japheth had 7 sons, first, Gomer, second, Magog, third, Madai, fourth, Javan, fifth, Tubal, sixth, Meshech, seventh, Tiras. History of the nations descended from the eldest son of Japheth, named Gomer, Genesis 10:2, 1 Chronicles 1:5, Ezekiel 38:6, Samarii, Italians, French, Sagambri, Gambrivi, Cimbri, Ancient Britons, Cumero or Welsh, Scotch, Irish, Comorians, Chomerians, Germans and various later writers, including Jerome and Isidore of Seville, as well as other traditional accounts, have assigned to them, are as follows. The line of Gomer, Scythians, Turks, Serbs, Croats, Armenians, Welsh, Picts, Irish, Germans, Teutons. The line of Magog, Scythians, Goths, Swedes, Finns, Huns, Slavs, Magyars, Hungarians, Irish. The line of Madai, Mitanni, Manna, Medes, more generally Persians, or even more generally Indo-Aryans. The line of Javan, Ionians, Greeks. The line of Tubal, Tabali, Circassians, Georgians, Italics, Iberians, Basques. The line of Meshech, Phrygians, Mescati, Moskoi, Illyrians. The line of Tiras, Thracians, Etruscans, Goths, Jutes, Teutons, Germans. Alrighty, and that will do it for this video. Catch you on the next one. Have a great day, and be safe. If you enjoyed this video, please think about subscribing, as well as hitting the like and sharing would help out a lot. Thank you all, peace out, people.